The 2010s decade will be over in 4 months. What do you think people will remember this decade for? The social media explosion. Real headlines trying to outdo The Onion. The meme renaissance. We've been at war for 18 freaking years. They will remember how great summer 2016 was. Minecraft's rise, fall, and rise again. The dress was blue. The decade where politics turned into a name-calling shit show where reason is irrelevant. Outrage addiction. The death of brick and mortar and the rise of Amazon Prime. Gangnam Style and Harambe. Spending the entire decade thinking last year was 2008. For Europe it will definitely be the refugee crisis. Knowing that global warming is going to hit us hard and doing virtually nothing about it globally. How stupid it was to get rid of the OJAK on phones. People believing vaccines are fake. Black president, orange president, and Tide Pods. School shootings. The birth of virtual reality, and in particular the start of the social VR revolution. Change, global warming, plastic in the sea, etc. Trump and everyone obsessing with Trump. It will be remembered as the decade where humanity took 1 step forward and took 4 steps back. The MCU is probably 2010's cultural landmark for blockbuster cinema. The wet fart that was Game of Thrones Season 8. Mass shootings. I'm not even from USA and that's what I'll probably remember. I'm still traumatized over Sandy Hook. The inflation of memes, beginning mainly in 2016, becoming popular with Harambe. The transition from a unipolar world of USA being the sole great power to a multipolar world with China and Russia increasing their assertiveness on the geopolitical scene. Bad music. Small businesses becoming more popular. And the rise of esports. Arenas full of gamers watching other gamers beat the shit out of each other. Dumb people got famous. I think the coolest thing for me going into the 20s is the fact I've been alive for 23 years and have been in 4 separate decades and 2 millenniums. But I personally think the 2010s will be known for social media. SM just blew up in the past 10 years, to the point where nearly everyone has some sort of SM account. Jeans at their tightest. I think jeans will slowly get less tight in the years to come. I'm seeing a lot of comments about apps and media, but I feel like the main thing is the creation of the smartphone which allowed all these things to become a possibility. I can imagine people making brainstorm maps 100 years in the future with smartphones at the center. Lol. The rise of Vine and TikTok, and creating memorable content in a couple of seconds. The popularity of YouTube, content users working full-time on there, gaining book deals and award nominations. Many kids who were born in this decade know how to use a smartphone, tablet before they're able to talk. Superhero movies, Game of Thrones, a massive divide in politics from social media that make people want to view things as black or white rather than gray. If we play our cards right, the successful raid of one of the most secure military bases in history. This decade will be remembered for the explosion of social media, how we became more accepting of LGBT people, how people could make music without needing a record label, and how politics became more volatile. Touchscreen smartphones. The iPhone was released in 2007 but was outsold nearly 6-1 by Nokia until the June 2010 release of the iPhone 4. Trivia tidbit: the iPhone 4 was the 3rd generation of iPhone, that the smartphone, superphone as it was called then, actually outsold Nokia. The rest is recent history. Nobody but drug dealers have anything but a touchscreen smartphone today. 2016 as the year that we lost dozens of musicians and actors. Jesus. That just shocked me. Hadn't even thought about it. Where the hell is time going? The first 2 non-white presidents. 1 black, 1 orange. First black first lady, first foreign first lady. Other politicians breaking identity boundaries, a female Native American lesbian MMA fighter Sharice Davids for Kansas. Tool released a new album. Rappers no longer need to be talented to be famous. Though started 2 years earlier, Marvel, quite successfully, attempted the greatest cinematic phenomena. The insanity of the far left and the alt-right, including the rise of open neo-Nazism and Antifa. Leonardo DiCaprio winning an Oscar. The beginning of the end of civilization as we know it. Shit is freaked up all over the globe and I'm starting to doubt we can turn things around. Ho, America turned into the world's reality show for 4 years in a row. It feels like a wasted decade. Hopefully, the 20s will be better. People getting extremely triggered or forcing their personal views, opinions onto anyone who is near, to the point where it becomes cringe or gives it a bad reputation. For example, the extreme need to let people know your thoughts on vaccines, abortion, vegans, feminists and so on. While there has always been rational debating on anything and everything, giving the spotlight to people who are either not actually educated on the subject of irrational and angry because it is entertaining, has led a lot of stupid people to spread hate and misinformation. The black hole photo that is like one of the biggest achievements. The world-going right-wing nationalist and an enthusiasm for people to express their inner arsehole. Corruption and the decline of Western civilization that was started in the 1980s and completed by this decade. The 1920 was the Great Depression and the 2010s will be known as the start of the Social Depression. Stupid trends like fidget spinners, Tide Pod Challenge and cool stuff like Bottle Cap Challenge and Pokemon Go, also social media and the rise of new consoles. The decade that showed us both the best and the worst the office of the president had to offer us. That global warming got noticeable to everyone. Living in the aftermath of the 2008 recession, followed by the rise of the far right across the world aided by foreign interference and abuse of technology. Also, memes. Lots of memes. Honestly, the beginning of the end. So much freaked up horrible shit happened this decade. Just wow. It feels like a combination of 30 years of shit in a 10-year period. This decade will be the rise of technology. iPhones, touchscreen computers, virtual reality, etc. The 70s were disco. The 80s were movies. The 90s and 2000s were punk music. The 10s were technology. Absolutely, for the beginning of the mass extinction. The beginning of the worst climate catastrophe we've ever witnessed, and most importantly, it'll be remembered for us not giving a shit. Is there any universe in which the answer isn't Trump? I mean, I guess if someone blows up DC in the next few months it'll be that, but barring something on that level, we'll be talking about this political shitshow for decades. Definitely Trump and the rejection of globalism. Increasing political tensions. Rise of the openly socialistic left and rise of the openly nationalistic right. Considering the US doesn't have much tank in the gas, this will probably be the decade historians point to as the prelude to the Second American Civil War and breakup of the Union. The last chance we actually had to save the planet. They'll remember this decade as a decade of inaction and an ignorance of the catastrophic, yet avoidable fate of our environment. Everyone getting offended. By everything. Always. The decade of hurt feelings. Trusting a reality TV host with the most important job in the country. The time when we realized global warming and climate change was seriously going to affect us and our future and we did nothing. The beginning of the end of the American experiment. Hopefully, I'm wrong, but who knows. This was the 5th decade I've been around for and the shittiest one by far. The death of retail shopping. The reveal that our planet is in danger and we did nothing to stop it. I think that the people will be remembered for needing instant gratification and short attention spans. Maybe I haven't scrolled far enough, but I haven't seen the opioid crisis in America mentioned. Smartphones. I almost guarantee that the 2020s will be known for artificial intelligence. Rise of fascism. And starting too late to combat climate change. So yeah, history books will not be nice. The rise of right-wing politics maybe. With the Brexit, Donald Trump, and multiple countries in Europe, Austria, Germany, the Netherlands, where the right-wing parties are getting a major boost. Migrants. The number of migrants, the news on migrants, and the general knowledge about the migrants, in the EU and the US, is on the rise. The decade is the decade where the climate migration has begun. Whatever will come of this, the number of people that had to move away from home will influence the next decade. The build-up to World War III. Sincerely, I think the overwhelming amount of political unrest across the world is going to bubble over. As the decade where we failed to fix our ways and stop climate change in time. From a design, aesthetic standpoint, minimalism, flat design, mostly due to the rise of tablets and browsing the internet on mobile devices. Clean lines, simple colors like black, white and gray. TV commercials, early 2010s ads are backed by upbeat xylophone, triangle, whistling, hand-clapping music, or people breakdancing or doing the worm to obnoxious dubstep music. The late 2010s have vivid colors and imagery, vaporwave-style aesthetics, and loud over-the-top spokespeople talking fast in the middle of the screen. Think Captain Obvious from the Hotels.com commercials or Terry Crews from the Old Spice commercials. Entering a new golden age of automotive design. Almost every new car from the decade is elaborately styled. Car interiors with angular, intricate dashboards, like the Ford Escape, Chevy Equinox or Hyundai Santa Fe. This might end in the 2020s as crash safety technology requires more new cars to look the same, and car interiors will replace dashboards and gauges with touchscreens, thanks, Tesla. A move away from chain restaurants and the rise of food trucks and locally owned restaurants that all feature string lighting, outdoor tables with giant Jenga blocks, Edison bulbs, and a craft beer selection written on a chalkboard. All houses are painted in that greige color and have all white kitchens with that same white subway tile backsplash. There is probably a barn door, shiplap accent wall, and a fiddle leaf fig inside. People are going to reminisce about how good the 2010s were. They may not seem good now, but just wait to see what the 20s have in store for you. Social media, influencers. Netflix, streaming, it was available before 2010, but didn't get reliable until after. Swipe dating apps, the word online dating and dating sites are now swapped with the phrases dating apps. Obama, Trump. The death of traditional media. Printed newspapers and periodicals, broadcast television and radio are fading. And while digital music way predates the 2010s, it took until this decade for pop stars to stop selling albums. They aren't tallying CD sales anymore, they're counting unique streams. From a video game standpoint, this is the decade of the indie explosion, esports, battle royals and microtransactions. From a cinematic standpoint, this is the age of superheroes. Comic book movies dominated in the last decade and they are not going anywhere anytime soon. The wild switch from President Obama to President Trump. Say what you want good or bad about either of them, but their ways of doing the job are very different in many ways. I'm just hoping that the 20s will be the resurgence of gangster suits, black fedoras, and saying things like, I'll punch you into mush, see. How are you all going to leave out the most influential trend of the 2010s? Fidget spinners. They united us as a nation in a time where our country was divided more than ever. They solved ADD overnight while boosting our economy to levels unseen since the pog craze of the 90s, don't ever forget this. Men's styles, patterned short-sleeve button-down shirts, flannel shirts, beards, high and tight haircuts. Women's styles, yoga pants, athleisure, jumpsuits, rompers, Coachella attire, don't know how else to describe this but it's a distinct look. Music, country, mumble hip-hop, bad repetitive pop, EDM and festivals. Tech, automation, social media, data, mobile phones, influencers. The incredible rise of misinformation and irresponsible knee-jerk reaction choices on very serious topics. The horrific turn the Area 51 raid took, resulting in hundreds dead and the unleashing of angry captive aliens upon the world to exact their revenge on humanity. The rise of the smartphone. Everyone has access to the internet and can voice their opinion towards the world at any moment with all the negative effects that it brings. Didn't see it here so I'll mention it. The Syrian civil war and rise and fall of the Islamic State. Depression and memes. But really, I think mental health will be one of the biggest problems going forward, and this is going to be known as the times when it emerged as a problem. The beginning of automation. A ton of jobs are already automated, but this decade was probably the true beginning, from testing driverless cars and drones to entire service industries being replaced by self-service counters. This will truly be the beginning of automated industries. Our inability to come together and tackle climate change. Hooray! Social networks and how everyone thought it was a good idea to keep track of everyone in their life. Kids in 10 years will be like, so you met this guy at the pub and added him into your social network. Didn't that give him access to all your social details? Privacy will become the biggest thing ever, and loose social media connections will become the exact thing not to do. You know, when you watch documentaries now about kids in the 80s hitchhiking or stepping into a serial killer's van because they said they had puppies in there, and you scream at the TV like, what are you doing, you idiot? That's how people will think of our 2010s years. The 2010s will be remembered as the decade where everyone went from chill to radicalized in a surprisingly short span of time. The promulgation of the internet. The 2010s saw the popularity of smartphones, which has revolutionized many industries. The internet is way more a force now than it was pre-2010. Network TV isn't a thing because of the internet. Brick and mortar stores are dying because of the internet. Cannabis legalization movement. As a graduate during the economic recession, it's the only real positive thing I remember in the past decade. And the crazy American cultural swing from Obama to Trump. It's the decade when all governments became a joke. Politics in the Western world descending into absolute farce. 10 more years of lost time to fight the climate change crisis. Unfortunately, it looks like the 2020s will be more of the same. The decade where we finally all started to realize global warming is a legit concern and how it's getting to a point of no return. Hopefully, the 2020s will be known as the Green Decade. Here's hoping. Anti-vaxxers. Social media. The death of music sales. Might be argued that this happened in the O, but I was still buying music then, and I haven't bought any music since the O. Everyone is a DJ. Climate change. Reality celebrities, influencers. The decline of traditional linear TV. The world at our fingertips, smartphones. Esports. 420 culture going mainstream. How about it got no actual name, just like the freaking last decade? What are they? The aughts? The tens? Also, after 2000 or so, that hipster teens never came up with their own fashions, mining the past, dressing like the goth and hippie grandparents.